Pain is to the body.
Pain is to the body as fear is to the mind, as guilt and shame are to the spirit.
Oof. That's so good.
It's processed in the same way. It shows up in your nervous system the same way. And if we can get comfortable with understanding that it exists on a spectrum.
Hi, I'm Megan Heritage, and this is the Positivity and Practice podcast. And I am here today with my good friend, Robin Isaacs. Robin, how are you?
I'm good. Great. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming.
I'm excited. Yeah.
You've been such a special person in my life. And I was thinking, I don't even really know how I originally met you. Do you remember?
Oh, I think maybe at yoga or online or a coffee shop maybe.
I feel like you're floating around my life. And then I definitely know when, so I have a injury at 5'6" in my neck that is causing my right hand to be a little bit numb. And I actually got to be a patient.
Yes, that too.
So that part was, that was really special to me because I had been through PT before, but you approach it a little differently.
Yeah. Not too differently. You know, you had some stuff going on we needed to fix, and then we needed to look beneath that to see how postures, positionings, activity, all those things played in, got into that. But yeah, I've been a physical therapist for 32 years, so I kind of see the mechanical parts of the body, and then I also see kind of what else is there with the muscles and how we perceive what's going on in the body and how we deal with that. So So
I guess when I'm saying differently, I had PT before and I felt like it was very technical. And there is a piece of you that I think believes in sort of the mind-body connection.
Yeah.
And there was a intake process that I felt like was far more relational than technical.
Mm-hmm.
And in talking about how this was affecting my everyday and, what we might be able to do. Because I don't have pain, which is, I think is different than what most people experience. Mm-hmm. I just have numbness and general annoyance.
Yeah, annoyance.
General annoyance.
Yeah, I think you use great words. Relational is one of the things that I like when I talk to my patients, and problem solving essentially. And then just an awareness of what the body's feeling, how the mind is, and, just relating to that and plotting solutions for that. If there's an awareness of something's going on, I'm not sleeping well, I got this thing down my arm, or I'm not able to function properly. We understand that from a physical level, but are we able to understand how the brain and the nervous system and the rest of it fits in? And that's probably what I do now. Came very late in my career. I've been, I was trained in the, if this hurts, then the solution is this, very physical, very technical, and versus the, what else exists there, right? What else exists in terms of tension or inflammation or congestion or the tissue of the body expressing what else is going on behind that,
Yeah, so when people come in, being that this is the, Positivity and Practice podcast, they're in pain.
Mm-hmm.
I would 90% of the time.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. How do you work into, making this a positive experience when I feel like the majority of the people that I talk to, they want a pill and a poke and they want immediate, results for. So what I've been told and what I realize about my own injury is that this is what's happened, right? Mm-hmm. So all of you who are 20 years old out there that are, still holding a phone and, in this position typing and in this position driving and in this position doing all of these things, the posture is certainly part of this yoga. We're in yoga together often, has helped with that. But how do you get people to a space where they recognize you're not going to be able to fix something in 2 sessions that they created over 20 years?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So when I sit and I look at somebody in front of me and I'm interviewing them for the first time and I'm asking them where this pain is happening or what's happening, it's like I was taught the condition and then I was taught the solution, versus like now I have an appreciation for all the other things that are going on around that in terms of how the body is receiving activity, or how healthy they are in that process, or how inflammation behaves, or how they're thinking about that, in terms of capacity. I can and I can't, or I'm struggling with this right now, and it manifests physically. And I always look for opportunities where I have endless examples of people that are saying the body is in pain, but there's all this other stuff going on as well. And is there a relationship there? First of all, from a scientific perspective, can we relate what's going on behind emotionally or mentally to what the body is experiencing? And there is definitely a connection from an inflammation standpoint, from an adrenaline standpoint, the nervous system, how the nervous system is functioning, how the brain is functioning. I'm trying to think of how to say this quite easily. The systems are definitely connected.
Oh, yeah.
The nervous system, the brain, the thoughts, the language we create, the emotional components of feeling happy or feeling sad, and how the body responds to that, just so we try to integrate that, which was a fairly new practice for me in the last 15 years, because I wasn't taught that way.
Right.
I wasn't taught to do it that way. So I don't know if I answered your question.
No, you did. I think it's been very interesting to me because I have so many friends who are physicians, in how little practitioners and people who are working to heal the body, you're all healers, in my opinion, if you're doing it right. They don't learn about nutrition. They don't learn about the gut. They don't learn about the mind-body connection. And like years ago, reading, The Body Keeps the Score, and the way that cortisol affects us, and not having these things that you and I are doing because we know that that's part of our toolkit, right? I know that yoga, meditation, walking in nature, getting my eyeballs in the sunlight. If I can't get my eyeballs in the sunlight, we have the happy light that's at our house. I know I need to be in the Word. For me personally, I know I need to be surrounded by people who love me and appreciate me and value me, especially if you're going out into, battle on a daily basis. And that was one of the things that, as you were talking to me, there were these tiny little nuances where I was like, oh, that's very interesting to me.
And yeah, I appreciated that when you were laying on the table and I was working on your neck, and we had great conversations about all of those things, and those play a role. And so, yeah, I have my own injury history and story, from sports and being a PT and surgeries and all sorts of dysfunction in the body. And then 4 years ago, I did something different. I did something completely different that was kind of contrary to what I was taught. You fix it this way. This is what you need to do. And I did some alternative stuff, and came out at the end of that time with like having to reconcile. I just went through this. I have to give some credit to things that are not physical therapy, right? So
alternative.
Yeah, exactly. And just understanding the process, I had to, with my science background and all my years of experience, I had to I'm like, why am I not in that much pain anymore? What, and so I had to then kind of essentially give that some credit and then look into it from a curious perspective as like, why is my hip not hurting? Why is my shoulder not hurting? Because I went through this journey, which was, some of it was physical therapy, some of it was movement, but a lot of it was something that we can talk about, in length based on those things that you mentioned, like cortisol management, stress management, fight flight management, sleep, all those good things, barefoot in the soil, some quiet time, some prayer time, meditation, all those things, calming the mind down. And I realized from my own body what actually fight flight felt like,
Right.
that adrenaline, that always on, didn't sleep, and like, why are my calves hurting? Why is my hip hurting? Why is my low back hurting? Why is my shoulder hurting? And then all of a sudden you wake up one day 3 years later and none of it hurts. And then you have to figure out what's the science behind it, and how do I explain this to people, and how do I bring this to my patients in a way that's not scary, for example.
Right.
Yeah.
I always hear the like woo woo,
Yes.
piece of it. And I think it's so interesting because, you know, if it's not working, it's not working. Right. And so at that point, I always say I have to notice and shift
Mm-hmm.
that I want to CrossFit. Like I want to
Mm-hmm.
CrossFit in the absolute worst way. There
Mm-hmm.
is something about the pitta dosha in me that is just like, I want to lift heavy weight up over my head. But realizing that I do not have the ability to govern uh, that type A hit it hard
Mm-hmm.
personality when I'm up in front of people and we're in a competition, I'm gonna throw that weight over my head and I'm gonna hurt
Mm-hmm.
myself.
Yeah.
And I didn't like that. I didn't like the limitation of that.
Yeah.
But once I got into more Pilates, more yoga, realizing that I can still lift weight, just not in the same way.
Mm-hmm.
And that this wasn't an all or nothing thing like, well, now I'm done working out.
Yeah.
When you got into focusing on, trying to try alternatives, what are like 3 things inside of, because I know it's going to be
Yeah.
vast,
Yeah. Yeah.
3 things that you felt like there was a noticeable change when you shifted?
I think mostly just recognizing the possibility that the way I've been doing stuff and the way I've been thinking about stuff is not maybe the full extent of what's available, right?
Yeah.
So the idea that I've pigeonholed myself and this is the solution, relatively not flexible about the answer, and so it in exploring with some curiosity, with some like, does this work? Does waking up in the morning and spending the first half an hour in quiet, calming my mind, doing a little bit of meditation or quiet time, and can I stop the thoughts from coming, 60,000 per hour, whatever the case may be,
The
right?
monkey mind,
Yeah,
that's what
yeah,
I call that.
exactly. So then developing some practices around that, right? Just developing an awareness of wow, this has been this way for a while and I'm not making serious headway, right? So an awareness of what's working, what's not working. And then the second one is maybe just to try different things that we all know. We all know what works based on social media and the internet and science, and there's a million people out there saying, oh, I got to get in the cold tub and I got to get in the sauna and I got to do this and I got to do all this work. So there's a lot to choose from. I think it's kind of personally at a place where I think it was a switch of I can choose today to make it better. I
Right.
can choose the kind of the courage that it takes to say I'm going to do something different today than I did for the last 20 years or the
Right.
last 15 years. The waking up and realizing that I can actually choose today to be healthier, to be better, right? And so that was the big thing for me. I mean, I've been through a ton of different stuff, but at the same time, I think of the list of things I've done, and then the idea that, maybe it was just now was just the right time for me to go through that. But also I'm here and there's nothing really wrong with me. I can just choose differently.
Right.
I don't have to do all these things that says, oh, you have to do ice bath, you have to do sauna, and you have to do this, and you have to do meditation, and you have to do this, and you have to get your bare feet for 20 minutes in the sand. No, it's you right now. You get to make that decision every single day, every single minute, or whatever the case may be. Just kind of make that the willful change that you want to make.
Right.
Without putting that pressure on yourself. Oh, so-and-so is doing ice bath and he's got a sauna in his backyard and I'm not doing that, so I must be less than, whatever the case. So I think I think it's an awareness for me. It became an awareness for me, and then a strategy, and then the empowerment of I have a choice today. I have a choice today to want to be different in my body. I want to be different in how many thoughts I have, and I want to be different in my inflammation creating stuff, which you might have to do some work in the body, in the mind, and the spirit for that.
Right. Yeah.
And then my biggest influence has been the understanding of how we use language to ourselves. How do we talk to ourselves? So the unspoken things or the spoken things or the thoughts, which is just essentially a vibration. I'm creating a vibration of, man, you're lazy, or man, you should get up, or man, that was awesome that you got up at 5 and you took an hour hike and you did some yoga. That was awesome too. So how we use language and how our story affects that language is one of my biggest, I try to bring people to that point of what kind of language are you using with yourself, which is foundational for me to make some kind of inroads in some kind of change if people want to change.
Well, in that, when you're in pain, I'm broken, this is no longer available to me. I'm getting old. I hear that all the time. I think one of the things you've offered this, go jump in Lake Michigan with me multiple times. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't like to be cold. That's the one I haven't done, the cold plunge, because,
oh my goodness.
Oh my gosh, I'm the one that's got 47 things on me at all time. There's not a ton of body fat on this thing. I'm I really do know, and I've seen it, and I recognize the data. That's the one that I'm okay, I'm still curious. I'm not ready yet, but I'm still curious. But that word curious has been pivotal in my own ability to just be I just want to try it, right? I just want to feel what it feels like inside of my body if I XYZ or PYQ. The meditation was one of the hardest things for me. I had a beautiful teacher who studied with Deepak Chopra, and I went to Sedona and worked on it and all of that. And I found that when I would sit in meditation, I would get into what Chopra calls the gap. And then the minute that I realized I was in the gap and I wasn't thinking about anything, I was like,
yes.
I'm in the gap. I'm mastering it.
Yes.
But then you're out of the gap.
Yes.
And so I started with 10 minutes and used an app called Insight Timer. It's totally free. And probably about 3 months in of consistently meditating for 20 minutes a day, I missed a meeting because I forgot to set a timer, and I don't know where I was. I wasn't asleep. But I came out of the meditation. Luckily, I think it was a UPS driver or somebody came to my house. And then all of a sudden, I feel like when I do that now, I had a nap. And the monkey mind, doesn't come forward. I did use some transcendental, and I did also use mantras in order to keep myself focused on something inside of that. But the way that my body feels when I am in or out of that practice is unbelievable, and it's free.
Right. And the amazing thing is that every time you do something like that, you're changing the way your nervous system functions, which is physical therapy, which is what we do. We try to do adapting the nervous system to a different way or a new way, whatever you want to call that,
Right.
is like, but we can go through the day with an endless monkey mind, and then our nervous system will function that way eventually, versus like, how can I practice or how can I change that? Because
Right.
we know the consequences of this long term would be I'm caught in this adrenaline cortisol cycle. I'm not sleeping well. There's physical consequences to that. There's physical inflammatory consequences to that. And excuse me, just so in terms of how you practice and how you adapt to the neuroplasticity that's happening when you take in a like this calmness of quietness in your nervous system, in your brain, in the language that you use. There's definite positive effects, scientific effects,
Right.
researched effects on the body. So, and I'm trying to link those things for my patients. I'm trying to link the okay, you've got this hectic day, you've got this posture, you've got this stagnation of fluid, you've got all these things that come with a certain way that we function in today's society, essentially.
Yeah.
And then what else is available, right? What else can I do? Can I be different? Because the discomfort and the friction and the pain inside the body is asking for something else.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's asking me to do something different. And we all have experienced that. We've all experienced discomfort, and the body's like, I want you to do something else.
Which is, so
Yes.
that's crazy to me, because there's two instances that I've talked to my sons at, probably ad nauseum. They're probably, rolling their eyes at this point. But I had an incredibly tragic situation and learned that a friend had passed. And in that moment, I threw up. Like and I've watched my kids go through anxiety and stressful things, and they're like, my stomach hurts.
Mm-hmm.
And that's so simplistic, right? Like, that is evidential that the body is keeping the score of the outside influence coming forward to us. And the other one is, for years we've been saying breathe. And when I
Mm-hmm.
actually looked into the data on metabolically what's happening in the prefrontal cortex and in the amygdala, and the way that we are biologically created, that if we feel like we are in a stressful situation where someone is going to hurt us,
Mm-hmm.
we're all in the amygdala, which means we have no access to the prefrontal cortex. And the only way scientifically, not even my opinion, not even your opinion, to be able to get from that amygdala back into the prefrontal cortex is 5 to 10 deep breaths, and,
Mm-hmm.
and centering that central nervous system so that the brain is like, we're safe. We now need to get back into thinking mode.
Mm-hmm.
It's wild to me because those are both free, right? It's
Yes.
free to recognize in beyond the, traumatic situation making us have an upset stomach, when we take a hot minute to be like, what do I feel like when I eat this food?
Mm-hmm.
What do I feel like when I treat my body poorly?
Yeah.
Do you get into much of
Uh, you're the only realtor that speaks of amygdala, by the way. So that's amazing. I just, when you use those words and you use relationship and you use relational and you use your awareness of what's actually going on
Yeah.
from a physiological level is amazing. So, I forget now. So, what were you asking?
Well, just the like when somebody comes in and
Yes.
that they're in that
Okay.
space, right?
Yeah.
They're in the like,
Mm-hmm.
my stomach hurts
Yes.
because they're tripping out, and
Right.
they're not approaching this in any way with a positivity. Like, I went in there thinking like, I have high hopes that this is going to be different. And
Mm-hmm.
the nerve flossing that you did, and you're the first person that touched my head,
Mm-hmm.
which was really interesting,
Mm-hmm.
and followed that,
Yep.
all the way up, and then looked at, is this inside of the arm? Like, where exactly is this happening?
Yeah.
But when somebody comes in and they are, all in the amygdala, like there's nothing possible for
Mhm.
me. This is it. I no
Yeah.
longer am going to have mobility. My friend
Yeah.
Jean had the
Yeah.
same thing happen and she's in a wheelchair now.
Yes. Yeah.
And,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. So I'm looking for opportunities where I could enter the system and enter the thought process, right? So when people are telling me their story, I'm looking for ways that I can enter and maybe add to it, and then maybe give them a stimulus to think about it a little differently.
oh my gosh. So I just have to say really
Yes.
quick, so he does what I do. My favorite parenting modality is when my kids say something that's like bananas to me. I'm like, say more words. Or what do you think about that? So I'm on the table and Robin just simply says, how much are you working? How how often are you able to get time for yourself?
Mm.
Right?
Yeah.
Nothing else.
Yeah.
No advice. No, you need to do this.
Yeah.
You should do this. The reason this is happening to you is
Yeah.
because you're in a constant
Yeah.
cortisol
Yeah. Yeah.
spike. Just to like, let me just leave this question
Yeah.
here.
Yeah. And I've learned the hard way about humility throughout my life,
Yeah.
and so if I think that I know the answer and I'm going to impose my view onto you, that I've learned the hard way, because what we were taught from a scientific perspective is I have to know the answer so that I can give it to you, right?
Mhm.
Which is a very much not a very humble approach to like recognizing the body and the miraculousness of the body and the interconnectedness of the body. So I'm looking for places where I can enter and help people move along. So I'm not fixing anything,
Right.
right? I'm looking in the body for sure when I put my hands on people and I do releases and I do soft tissue and I do manipulations and but I'm also looking at how can I enhance the pathway for them to figure it out, right? So asking really good questions and they know the answer already, right? You know the answer. So I'm looking for ways where I can bring that out of somebody because it already exists there. It already exists inside somebody to be, uh, you know, a cut on your arm is going to heal without me. A broken bone is going to heal without me. A herniated disc is going to heal without me. I'm just coming alongside and like facilitating like this progression
Yeah.
into recognizing. So if you do recognize at the end of our sessions that I might have to pay attention to movement, I might have to pay attention to nerve congestion, I might have to relax my shoulders and the inputs from my eyes creating tension in my neck. Can I change all those things, right? And we can change it because it
Yeah.
exists. So rather than saying, I hold all the tools, Megan, and I'm going to fix your neck for you kind of thing, So that's kind of my posture when I'm in there. But
Yeah.
I'm also looking for those ways where it's interesting because I wasn't there for a long time. Like I've been practicing for 32 years and it may be only the last 15 years where I've recognized that I'm not fixing anybody. I'm coming alongside and I'm facilitating. That's all I'm doing. And sometimes I have to facilitate harder than other times. So, but I'm recognizing all the elements there, all the systems at play, right? So
Yeah. And I
trying
feel
to
like
bring
it's
that
like
out.
teaching a man to fish
Yeah.
instead of, I walked out of everybody else with here's your exercises and this is your homework. And, you know, uh, I'm like, okay, great. Like, let me
Yeah.
add this to my list of 45 things that I'm going to be crawling up a wall like
Yeah,
this. And
yeah, yeah.
I did all the things because I'm a fantastic patient. I just felt like with you, it was far more of this is a journey that we're going to go on together. And I'm going to give you tools and resources. And we're going to try a little, like more geometric than linear, right? So I
Yeah.
feel like when you get in that process. You say process, and I love that because my Canadianness says process in me. Um, when you get to, okay, we're going to do this, 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 and this, and then you're not fixed at the end of this, 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 and this, you feel completely defeated. Whereas you approached it with we're going to geometrically try a multitude of things, but we're really going to pay attention to how you feel in the body, what you feel like when you leave, what's going on in your work environment, what's going on with your day-to-day practice. And I've recognized in working in the B event and with women, usually if somebody calls me and they're coming in hot, I can go back to the last 72 hours of their lives and say, have you been in spaces of loving connection? Have you been with a power that's higher than yourself? How was your sleep? Have you drank alcohol? What have you fed your body? And I can really quickly get to,
Yeah.
you're all junked up because you fed yourself junk.
Yes, exactly.
Right?
The inputs. You're the only realtor that talks that way. Kudos.
Well, I mean, I have a master's degree in education, and I just got super interested in, I think, talk therapy wasn't fantastic for me. 11 deaths over 10 years. I felt like something was stuck in my body energetically. And that's when we didn't have any of these things available to us here. Now we have so many different things from, flossing to cupping to different kinds of massage to different kinds of yoga classes to meditation to breath work to drumming. I was going to California and Sedona because, I mean, if I'm honest, I wanted to be here for my kids and everything else, but there just wasn't a lot of joy in my life. And I felt foolish saying, financially, I've been incredibly blessed through my clients and the work that I get to do with them. Spiritually, I'm involved in my church. I'm a good mom. I have a husband who loves me. Like 99.9% of the things are going great. I'm just sad, right? It didn't feel good to be, it felt like there were other people who needed help more than I needed help. But what I realized is by not asking for that help, I was blocking my ability to show up as Christ's hands to serve. And the healthier I can keep myself, the more I can serve other people. And that's what gives me the biggest joy and makes me feel like I have a sense of purpose. I feel like in working with you, the physical therapy, the healing is just a modality for how you come forward with the time, talent, and treasure you've been given.
Yeah, I struggle with that sometimes, but I'm getting there, I think from my own story and how I've had to let parts of that go, and I had to change some narratives around that, because I was working like it was all units and productivity, right? So
that's how we're trained in business.
And the thought process behind that was, if I'm successful and if I know the answer and I can produce units, I'll be accepted, and I get a feeling that I belong. Versus, like, there's this inherent nature that we all belong already, right? We all part of the whole and the source, and I think that when I looked at people when I was functioning that way, I was always looking at, like, I have to do this. I have to find the answer. I have to find the solution for the pain in their body, versus like, okay, no, let's do that a little differently. Let's figure out how to love them a little bit better.
I know you
right?
do such a good job at that.
So yeah, and I think in a posture of this, like, this production, like, I was thinking like, if I work harder, I can make more money, kind of thing. This extractive kind of, versus like the wholeness of, this is a person in front of me, right? So this is the person, and they're here for a reason. They are here for a reason. And if I just take that as the gift or the beauty, then I can show up in a little different way, not thinking, oh, I'm producing units or I'm producing revenue. I'm this. I'm showing up in a little different way, and that's completely changed my practice. Right. So that's the part that gets me a little bit emotional about people and how I love them is
Right.
essentially on my table, or doing what I do for them, which is a gift. I would assume I'm not, I don't take that lightly, right? So the idea that I can figure that out, and that be my thing, that be my talent. Like if somebody lays down in discomfort or pain, I might be able to help them get out of that, So, and I contrast the idea of just the posture that I took in those moments where, if we're thinking about this extractive unit production versus like thinking about this person as a whole, right?
Yeah.
Thinking about them, I show up differently. I show up with a little bit more love and possibility and like empathy and those kinds of things. So that shaped my practice immensely. Just that posture that I take before I come to work, the the gift that I get to help people.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
So
I feel that way too. And I was talking to a realtor that is not part of our brokerage, and she said, "I'm just so excited that I have a listing." And I thought, "Aren't you always excited?" Because it was about this particular environment that we're in right now, where listings are really light, and I just feel like it's funny because it's all over TikTok right now and Instagram. Like, we listen and we don't judge. I spend a lot of time saying, like, what are our motivations to sell? And a lot of time it's job loss, death, injury, divorce, relocation. Like, we're moving because we don't want to move. And people are there to see you, and they don't want to see you because they don't want to be in pain. But I feel like that is the difference between doing transactional real estate or transactional healing versus relational real estate or relational healing. And I feel silly sometimes when people say, how have you been so successful? And I literally am like, well, first of all, I don't have a fear of scarcity. I believe that God will provide for me and he'll bring the people forward. We have some kind of reciprocal agreement that as long as I continue to help people and benefit back to the community, the people will keep showing up, and round we go.
Yeah.
But that neuro pathway that we build when, I don't know if it's just our generation. It'll be interesting to see how other generations come forward of, I produce, therefore I have value, is so real. Like the first years that I was like, I don't care what so-and-so did.
Yeah.
I don't care what such and such did. And I say it all the time because realtors are the only people who are on the internet saying, I sold 50 million last year. I sold 75 million. Like no one cares.
Yes.
All you're doing is speaking to other realtors.
Yeah.
People care about how much you gave back to the community or how you impacted their family in a financial way or in a time of like great stress or whatever. I think it's a really interesting thing to talk about. How do we change that neural pathway to get people to recognize I have value, whether I never sell another house again for the rest of my natural life, and what everybody thinks about me for choosing to or not do that or hit that volume or not hit that volume is none of my business.
Right. And I think in the medical field where I'm in, I see this every day. So if I see my stories from my patients, I know that they really don't care about United Healthcare making $78 billion a year. They really don't. They want to know that, hey, if I need to go to the hospital or I need to see a doctor or I need to have shoulder surgery, that those things will be available. Insurance is another big thing that it really makes my day like there's a lot of friction there because I see some of the people that don't get because of the insurance, so, and then I have a lot of patients who are having to choose between an expensive medication, right? We're getting political here or whatever the case may be. But there's people that I see that have to choose between, do they buy this medication or do they, get to eat this month or whatever the case may be. Drastic. But I see medical as moving away from the wholeness of treating somebody with love and taking care of them, right? The whole idea of like what we think should happen versus what's actually happening from a commercialization of medical care, right?
Sure.
So yeah, there's the and that is filling my day, right? So that fills my day because this person can't get this because the insurance says they can't, right? But they need it. And that would make their life so much better if they had it, right? So there's a conflict there with me from in the whole medical community of moving away from actually what somebody needs to the commercialization of this product that we can, that we can make money out of people suffering or pain or needing surgery or whatever the case may be, right?
Yeah,
So,
we have the same thing in affordable housing.
Yes, exactly.
And I don't even think it's like political. I think it's just a human condition that there should be some level of equity for everybody for the, being able to have good education for their kids, being able to have good access to healthcare, being able to have a safe and environment to live in, and just these baseline things that I think we all want. I try not to get too caught up in the minutia of the things that I can't control.
Sure.
But there is definitely still a frustration in things that feel like inequity, or even in a lack of education about what else might be available. Like, if not this, then how about we do this? Like, you can't afford to buy right now, but if you were to rent this kind of property for this amount of time and put this away so that we don't have a prolonged situation, here's the things we can do for you right now. But that has to be really frustrating when you're talking about like the actual human body and how pain and discomfort affect your ability to go to work, your ability to be kind, your ability to get good rest, your ability. So
yeah, and I've seen a lot. That's part of me. That's part of the processing of what's happening now. And I have a lot of elderly patients. I have some 95-year-olds. I have a 90-year-old, 93-year-old.
I've seen that, yeah.
So some of my clients they live alone. They don't have a lot of family or resources.
Right.
So there's the how do we take care of that? I'm always looking for ways like, can I get some interns or can I give something to the younger people and they can help out the older people that need snow shoveling and leaf raking, and somebody with rotator cuff can't shovel their driveway, and how do I bring those two worlds together? And I'm always thinking about that. But even in my thinking about that, I have to check my ego. I have to check my story. I have to, I'm looking at it from a perspective of, oh yeah, this is, like the victim mentality versus what I can do, right? So I'm gonna show up today, and I'm not gonna dwell on this, but I'm gonna try to find that solution. I'm gonna try to find that courage to say, oh, this can be different if I just do this, right? So,
right. Here's the things I always say, like, you can't die on every hill.
Yes.
There's some people who are really good at food scarcity. There's some people who are really good at supporting people in domestic violence situations. There are people, and I like to give them money because they already know what they're doing in that space. But like affordable housing and little people, like those are the spaces where I'm gonna lean in with my whole chest.
Yes.
But I totally understand the frustration of I have to say to myself, you are God and I am not, because I will get real righteous. Real quick and want to hand it over, take it back, and just this awareness of what am I here to learn? Because I believe like God wastes nothing. And how do we shed light on this where maybe somebody can help more, or that kind of, I feel that a lot because I think it is an ever evolving situation with inflation. And I also don't understand when I talk to some of our friends where they're like, well, the 3 supplements you gave me are $60, a month or whatever. And I'm like, girl, you get your nails done 3 times a month.
I'm not judging them.
All right. I listen and I don't judge.
Yes, listen and don't judge.
Right. But if you're coming to me and you're
Yes.
saying that you don't feel good, and I'm telling you that something simplistic like some D&B vitamins and magnesium and things that we know at this point, like your
Yes.
iron levels are low, like you're perimenopausal, because I love knowledge. Like I just read absolutely everything and then hang on to, I was into like the gut biome long before functional medicine was coming forward and all of this stuff. And it's just fascinating to me how all of these things are interconnected. But there is a piece of it that's like, you can't go get your nails done and feel like, fix your gut, Well, I only had 4 glasses of wine, in the last 2 days. Like, okay, bud, how's it make you feel like the following morning? Not in the moment, that kind of thing. So I imagine you're sort of trying to unlock all of the different pieces and parts and things that are going on inside of this to get to the real solutions.
I think a lot of my when I'm one-on-one with somebody, the idea of I feel this, right? So most people, when they are in discomfort, they don't actually want to feel discomfort, which is partly like they want to escape. They want to get away from that very quickly. And partly in my journey, the understanding of the whole spectrum of comfort to discomfort, if I'm good with all of that, and I'm really good at feeling what I'm feeling when that's happening, I don't want to avoid, because discomfort's inevitable, right? Discomfort's inevitable. If I sit on a plane for 10 hours, my butt's going to hurt or my nerve is going to hurt and I'm going to move. I'm going to have to move. So understanding for me that the whole spectrum is actual evidence of our humanity, that we are going to feel uncomfortable. We are going to be in pain. We are going to be fearful. We're going to have guilt and shame, whatever the case may be. And learning to be okay with that. And having this moment where if you get into the space and you can actually surrender to that versus escape that, right? So escape the discomfort or medicate the discomfort versus like, can I sit with it? Right? Can I sit with it in a way that it helps me grow? It helps me become more curious. It helps me plot better solutions. And so when I talk about discomfort, it's typically in the body.
Yeah.
And I have a great kind of principle where pain is to the body as fear is to the mind, and as guilt and shame are to the spirit. So if we can tackle all of those things in a spectrum where it's not going to last forever, it's transient, things are going to change, and can I build the capacity to cope with that entire spectrum, with the entire spectrum of no pain to extreme pain, right? Sometimes I'm in really bad pain with a back spasm. Can I be comfortable with the entire spectrum of fear? And can I be comfortable with the entire spectrum of guilt, shame, love, joy, peace, happiness, enlightenment, whatever the case may be on the other end of that spectrum? And then learning how to be there and then create out of that is.
So I want you to say that again, because I feel like people are going to hit the rewind button. Pain is to the body.
Pain is to the body as fear is to the mind, as guilt and shame are to the spirit.
Oof. That's so good.
It's processed in the same way. It shows up in your nervous system the same way. And if we can get comfortable with understanding that it exists on a spectrum.
Yeah.
Some days I'm going to wake up and I'm going to feel, man, I'm feeling this, or I'm feeling guilty about this, or I shouldn't have done that, or my story is a little bit more complicated. And then at the same time, understanding that there's complete joy and possibility available in that same spirit, right?
Right.
And then as pain, the simple pain is very simple, right? It's either there or it's not, and the whole spectrum of that, like, I feel great. I can go for a run. I can hike. I'm feeling great after yoga. I'm feeling great after the ice bath. I'm feeling really good after meditation and breathing, for example. But can I tolerate the opposite end of that spectrum?
Right.
And then getting really comfortable with that without what I would say was my tendency to get into this victim mentality versus the creator mentality, right? So my victim was like, oh yeah, I have a bad back, I have a bad hip, I've had 4 knee surgeries. I'm not going to do anything about it, right? I'm just going to sit here on the couch and eat more potato chips versus like, can I get up and do some breathing? Can I go to yoga? Can I do some exercises? Can I do the true stretch? Can I talk to a massage therapist or whatever the case may be? So creating the possibilities out of that,
Right.
So yeah, so I like, that's one of the things that's not an original thought that was stolen by one of my teachers way back in the day.
Yeah.
I stole it from them. So when I think about pain in the body and fear and thoughts and this racing idea in the mind,
Yeah.
and then if we come really down to it, parts of your story as, for me, recognizing where that gut punch or that guilt is in the story, and can I be okay with that? Can I create out of that versus do I have to stay there and not change it, right?
Well, and I always say that's the responsibility when you're a grown up and you know that you have pain or trauma and it's stored in the body and you have the ability to be able to get help. It's your job to go and get help so that doesn't become a generational curse that bleeds out over everybody else, right? Like now I have an awareness that there is something in me where I'm pushing my paradigm or my experiences onto, my small humans or whatever. I have responsibility to not allow that to happen. You feel like a combination of the very first book that I read was The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. And that is talking about, these thoughts that are not us, that are outside of us, that are not part of us in our highest and best use. Eckhart Tolle, who's got the same kind of jam going on. And then Pema Chodron, who wrote a book, she's a Buddhist monk, called Comfortable with Uncertainty. And I read that book 3 times over losing multiple friends. And each time it smacked me a little different. But between all of those, I always ask, let me learn this lesson to its completion and take away any ego or judgment or victimhood that I have that is up against this, so that I don't keep relearning this same lesson.
Yeah.
Do you know those authors?
Yes, I do. I do. And I related to I heard an amazing analogy about how did Michelangelo, I think it's Michelangelo, create the Statue of David, right? And he said, I didn't carve the Statue of David. I just took away all the stuff from the marble that wasn't David, right?
Right.
So creating this masterpiece, using that analogy or metaphor in a way that I'm removing the stuff from myself that I don't need anymore. I'm removing parts of me just to reveal the David, the masterpiece, right?
Yeah.
And essentially that's our journey, that's our story with the I am giving us the power to do that, just to remove all the nature of ourselves and the things that have some friction or the uncomfortable things, and then creating this eventual masterpiece is like, so yeah, all of those authors, but I've studied a little bit more about the mind and how the mind creates.
Yeah.
I've listened to a lot of Peter Crone.
Mm-hmm.
He's the mind architect guy, and so just stealing bits of information from all those people, and then an understanding of this inherent gift that I have that was given to me.
Right. It's not mine.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
None of the stuff I have is mine.
And then in the world of like dissolving my thoughts and my ego and all the stuff that doesn't serve me, can that be dissolved, and can I be the best expression of Robin, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
and how I relate to my clients or my peers or my family or those kinds of things. So
I love
that is part of my nervous system. There was a time where the acquisition of knowledge was like the thing, and then it became the practice. Why don't you just practice it versus know about it, right? And then as soon as you get into the practice, you realize that you can create something different. You have the power to create something different. And I think that's when I start with my patients or my clients, I want to get them to that point that they can create something different if they don't like what they have.
Yeah. And day over
yes.
day over day, and you don't get to allow other people's opinions of your past or whatever. Like, I don't, poor 16-year-old me, like, I'd give that girl a hug. Like, she just had really bad tools. And, you know, when I have not drank I think in May, it's 2 years. And I laughed because when I would go out, I just said, like, it doesn't feel good in my body. Like, I don't sleep well. It's like a elevator ride to my basement. I tell myself I did things that I didn't do. My friend Meg called it the scary Sundays. Like, I mean, none of these things happen. My husband's stone cold sober. He's always with me. And he's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Like, you were completely and totally fine. But I was always kind of one and done, to and through. And when I made this decision, not all, but a lot of people were like, well, did you try vodka? Well, did you try organic wine? Well, did you try a stir stick inside of your wine to get rid of the like sulfates or tannins or whatever it is? And I came home and said to my husband, who hasn't drank in almost 30 years, I said, you're getting away with this because you're a real alcoholic. All you have to do is say, like, I'm an alcoholic, I don't drink, and people leave you alone. For me, I have to justify not putting poison inside of my body. And I think that might be more about the other people. And he responded, which makes me think of your Michelangelo story. Good design is not derived from what needs to be added to it, but what cannot be taken away. And so holding this space for like, no, I'm healed, healthy, and whole. Will I ever drink again? I don't know. But did I ever have an issue? That was the other thing. Everybody was like, what happened? What happened? Like,
something.
I didn't do something crazy. Like, nothing happened, you know? And I've been at all of these different dinner parties and things like that. Like, he always says, I don't mind if you do, if you don't mind if I don't. But now I think, well, if I go down on Friday night, then I'm going to be a garbage hole sandwich with you at Wildflower and yoga on Saturday. And it's not worth it to me to give up this new pattern of behavior where I know I'm consistently going to feel good and have my baseline be fantastic instead of like dipping this thing down. So I just love what you say about, you know, like kind of one day at a time. I say, you know, if I look too far back into my future, I have anxiety and guilt, or I'm sorry, I have shame and guilt. If I look too far into my future, I start to get anxious about what could or could not happen. But if I stay in the present, then I feel like I've got the best opportunity to be present, to do what I need to do today in order to be God's hands to serve and, you know, try to be my highest and best use. I love that. I love that you're like, no, let me just get you started on a track, you know, instead of like, I'm gonna fix you.
And it's profound because for me, there was a big shift in like, there was something missing. I knew it because, you know, the idea of production and I have to know the right answer. And I have this reputation because I'm always busy and people need to come see me. That whole thing was fake, false, right? And as soon as I realized that, or as soon as my brain and my nervous system recognized that that was the friction, and if I could let that friction go, can I sit with it a little bit and can I have some really stern words with it? I can create something else.
Right.
And that's like the power that exists in everybody.
Yeah.
The power to recognize what's uncomfortable, what's not working, have an awareness of how strong you are in those moments, and then tolerate the full experience or feel the full experience, and then come out of that with some courage to create something different.
Yeah.
And I would encourage all my people who have physical discomfort or to go through that kind of paradigm where you have the ability to change how you feel or how you function or how you create versus accepting that, oh yeah, that's just the way it is for me.
Yeah.
So
It feels like permission,
yes.
right? Like I'm
Yeah.
giving myself permission
Yeah.
to move forward in a
Mhm.
way that better serves me because I have better tools now.
And inherently in us is to be vital, to be healthy, to be, salt and light, for example, inherent in us. And if we are depressed and in pain and uncomfortable and we don't know how to get out of that, then we don't do this on the other side very well, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, in your space, it can be, catastrophic and
Yes.
something you
Yeah,
never, really get out of.
Mhm.
And as we get older and all of those things, even more, the consequences,
Mhm.
get even bigger. So,
Yeah.
well, I could talk to you forever and have like 5
That was
podcasts
enjoyable.
in one. Personally, thank you for Robin. Robin's name came up just over and over again as I was talking about my injury, from chiropractors to a physician to a trainer that I was working with to friends, over and over. Well, have you ever met? Well, have you ever met? Well, have you ever met? And I love the practicum. I mean, obviously you need that to understand the human body and where the nerves are and all of that, but I love the healer
Mhm.
in you so much. And what you see is really what you get. Every
Yeah,
time
yeah.
I see you, you're, how are you? Are you okay? Checking in
Yeah.
on you. How's your
Yeah.
Saturday? There's just something that is uh, very genuine about who you
Yeah.
are, and your honesty and your vulnerability about your own journey and the story and the experience. Our community is really blessed to have you.
Mhm.
And I'm really, really grateful to call you friend.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And as you use those words, I recognize that in you too.
Yeah.
So
Thank you.
you do great things for Grand Haven and people. You have a way of connecting people. You have a way of giving. That I see the vanity plate driving down the road. I have a vanity plate too. So
You can't cut anybody off.
You mentioned that when Kelly was on. Like I have a vanity plate and it has some meaning.
What is yours?
Mine is changing because my wife just registered, but it'll be YNWA, which is the song that they sing at the Liverpool football matches. You'll never walk alone.
Oh, I love that.
You never walk alone has a lot of significance. It'll be on my vanity plate, but it is kind of the driver of the journey, right? So when we're there, the song has a ton of meaning to me, and it just so happens to be my favorite football team.
Oh, I love that.
And it is, when you walk through a storm, hold your head up high,
Mm-hmm.
and don't be afraid of the dark. For at the end of the storm, there's a golden sky,
Oh, I love
and
that.
then you'll never walk alone. So, yeah, that's how I'm going through life.
Well, if someone wants to get in touch with you and needs help in the PT space, the healing
Yeah.
space, how do they do that?
So we are a very small private practice, intentionally so. We have physical therapy on Van Wagner and in Holland. And it's a curated experience where we will look at you, mind, body, spirit, and try to plot a solution for you to create what you want, create the movement that you want, to create the physical health that you want. I think if we look at the company's mission and values, it's kind of shaped by me, but there's other therapists that work there, and a group of people that are serving, creating, and facilitating better physical health for people.
I love it.
Yeah.
So we're going to link the contact information for Robin and his team. And thank you for listening today. I really believe that we should all be on a journey to fix the things that we feel are not serving us. It's our responsibility. And it's a gift to have healers and people inside of our community that do want to collaborate and connect. So if you're looking for help with the PT space, contact Robin and his team. I'm Megan Heritage, and this has been a little longer episode of Positivity in Practice. Keep it positive.